I'm so excited for this next event. My friend, our Isaí Madriz, he is an entomologist. He is a zoologist. He's a National Geographic explorer, a Fulbright fellow. He likes to get out. He's in Chile, in Patagonia, get out on expedition to spots that people rarely travel to. He does it solo a lot of the time, unsupported, which is pretty wild, pretty amazing. And he's out there. What's he looking for? He is looking for, well, he's going to tell us, jewels, amazing species of insects that are often overlooked, and not just finding them, but finding their different life stages. So pretty amazing stuff. We've done lots of live stuff with him from the field with classrooms around the world, rappelling down waterfalls and using pack rafts to navigate rivers. I'm going to bring him in now. It looks like he's hanging out in a shed or an office full of gear and equipment. I'm sure all that comes in handy for that, solo expedition stuff.
Hi, Joe. Yeah, actually, well, thank you for the invitation. Yeah, this is my my nerd cave. Back there, that's all the expedition stuff that I use, depending on where I go. And you're not able to see it, but like all the insect-related equipment is over here.
All right. Yeah,
well,
who needs a bat cave when you have a nerd cave?
It's even better, like bats. There's guano, and here there's none. They're just insects.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Well, Isaí, I'm going to let you take over for a little bit. I got a tiny sneak peek of some of the amazing photos you're going to share with us. We're excited, so I'm going to let you take over.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe. All right. Well, let me start. So my name is Isaí Madriz, just like Joe mentioned. I do a lot of exploration in remote areas of Patagonia trying to look for insects. So I'm going to, my presentation is going to be slightly different. I'm just going to focus on images. My goal is for you to actually see how beautiful insects are, because I use a lot of macro photography to show the beauty of the unexplored world, things that we just almost stepped on. So you guys are in for a treat. A lot of the photos that you're gonna see are of new species. So my work is finding new species out in nature to try to identify the keystone species, those lineages that have been alive for millions of years. And Patagonia is one of those places that has a lot of them. So you're going to see a lot of those images. So all these are images of insects from southern Patagonia. All of them, except for a couple, are from the Isai region. So without further ado, let's start sharing the screen so you guys can actually see my screen. So let me see. Okay. So I think, Joe, can you see this? I just want to make sure that you guys are seeing this.
We got it. Looks good.
Awesome. Sweet. Okay. So yes, jewels of Patagonia. Just like Joe said, I try to look for not only the adults, like the one that you see here, I try to look for the immature life stages, larvae and pupae. And that is a challenging part because I try to put them in a ecological context. I try to see where you find them, what they do, what is their ecosystem services, like what is their niche or what they do in nature, in order to understand how to preserve all these rare lineages, rare species. And when I find one, I usually find a lot. So starting where I am, where I'm broadcasting from is from southern Patagonia. So the southern tip of South America, right here on your right, you see the Southern Patagonia Ice Field. So the area within the red rectangle is where I do most of my work. So in order to do this, I have to carry anywhere from 30 to 60 kilos of gear on me at all times to try to document what I do. In order to transect all this fragmented area, I use pack rafts. So it's an inflatable raft that you can actually put in your backpack whenever you're in land. Incredibly amazing technology to do the kind of work that I do. And whenever there's roads, I actually use my bamboo fat bike. So I just carry everything that I can in order to be self-sustainable. So in this presentation, I'm going to take you from the ocean all the way to the mountains to actually reach the mountaintop glaciers. So we're going to pass through forests like you see in here, and in order to reach those areas where the biodiversity dwindles, but the ones that you find there are incredible. So this is a group that we went out last year looking for the glacial stonefly, one of the only true insects found in the ice fields in Patagonia. So this is what I try to look for. Those little jewels that nobody has seen before. Even though this one is very well known, it's just beautiful and I had to put it in there. So what I do is I just get on my raft and I just go into uncharted waters to try to reach really secluded areas. So that's just me carrying everything, and I'm going to I'm heading to that glacier on the top left that you see on the very end over there. So what I try to do is once I reach those areas, I camp and I begin my work. I try to find the insects that start populating the recently deglaciated areas around the Northern Patagonia Ice Field. That is my focus right now. So from the glacial lagoon, I start making my way into the forest, and this is one of the average scenes that I get to go through. By the way, these are areas that you need a permit, a scientific permit, in order to get in. So most of this have not been explored by many people, and I can tell you, no entomologists usually go there because of everything that you need to do. So I look for areas that look like this, just like ancient, primitive-looking forests. And once I find those, even though they're beautiful, I focus on the small parts. So I focus on the floor, all that biodiversity that is growing on the actual tree bark itself. And in there, once you move it around, you start finding things like this. It's just so amazing, you know. So those horn-like structures, they're actually the respiratory structures. It's just crazy. Imagine that's like their noses. It just blows my mind every time I go and see things like this. I don't know if this species is described. I need to go and get it again in that remote area where I found it. Try to rear it to get the adult, because the vast majority of taxonomy is being done with adults like this one. So this one, even though it looks like a ginkgo leaf, it's a fern. It's an endemic fern that you see down here. So this little structure right here, those are the sori. So that lets you know that it's a fern, and that is one of the oldest groups alive. It's a perisomatid. That's a new species that I found. So that's a pretty cool thing. So going deeper into the forest, you find areas like this, and as an entomologist, you start asking yourself, where do you begin to look for insects in this forest? And the truth is, they're everywhere. That is the beauty about this. So in the previous presentation that you saw with Kaylee, she's talking about like new species everywhere. You know, like, yes, the tropics are extremely biodiverse, but when it comes to insects, there's so many insects that we still don't know. And in the forest, you start finding things like this, other little tiny jewels. The larvae of this insect is a wood borer, and right here is on top of a endemic fungus. I found it because when I'm out in the field, I eat those fungi, the little tiny balls. They're delicious, and this guy was just feeding on my dinner, so I just kicked them off my dinner and just ate it before I took a photo, of course. This is another one. So these are just beetles that you end up finding around here in Patagonia and nowhere else. You do see them crossing over the international line into Argentina, but since most of my work focuses on the temperate rainforest of southern South America, you usually find most of that in the Chilean side. And this one, I'm sure a lot of you have already seen it. This is the Darwin's beetle. I'm actually I've been doing research on this for 3 years now, on trying to figure out how long it lives, what it feeds on. And even though Darwin collected it in the 1800s, we still don't know how long it lives. So that lets you know that even something as well known as this beetle, it's completely misunderstood in some areas of its development. But then, this is the cool part. You've seen beetles, you've seen wasps, bees, but flies, they're just amazing. So this is a fly. So crane fly, primitive crane flies, that is my specialty. I focus on the primitive crane flies from the world, and down here in Chile you find 3 genera. I found a new species, and it's this one. This is a new species. As you can see, they're beautiful. They're about 2 inches long, so they are quite large for a fly. but they're just beautiful. This is another one. So all those three are the three different genera that you find down here. And when you look at them close, just look at that, like how beautiful this species is. What you see, that yellow part right there, is pollen. So they actually lap liquids up from wherever they can find them to find nutrients and to be able to survive. How long they live, that's part of the work that I try to do here. What they feed on, where you find them, and what they actually do out in nature. And in order to do that, I have to cross areas where there's no roads whatsoever. So moving along, in my bag is everything that you see in this photo. This is my field lab. I have my tent, which is that super cool structure floating on top of me right there. That gives me a little canopy to put my microscope below, so I can actually identify down to species level the groups that I'm focusing on. So once I find it, I try to collect it at different times of the day. So this is, of course, at nighttime. What you see on the back, that white water part is water. So I find it, I try to understand what they do during the day and night. And then in the morning, I just put on my dry suit and I just jump into the glacial fed rivers, trying to look for insects. And this is where things just go crazy. They just go nuts. They're amazing. You end up finding little insects like this. So this is going to be a beetle when it grows. This is a larva. They're just kind of wild. And then this is a family of mayflies that you only find down here in southern South America. So this is a predatory mayfly, and those yellow structures right there, that is what they breathe with. Those are their gills. So you can actually see those yellow paddles, and in between, as you can see right here on the top left, those are the gills. So imagine that. Imagine having respiratory structures like that. They're just crazy, and the colorations is they're not only yellow, they vary all the way from yellow to purple. There are other stoneflies down here that just look amazing. This is, just look at it. It's just like a tiger, and it's holding onto the vegetation. So now, what you see right there, that is the average size of those larvae that you just saw. So they're incredibly small, and that one right there is a torrent midge. So you find it in the torrential parts of the streams and rivers, and this is what they look up close. So going back, just look at that. Look at the size of that larva, and look at the actual larva, what it looks like. Those circles are ventral suckers. So they use that to hold on to the rock, where they actually graze on top of whatever is growing on the rock. So they're little kind of tiny, like miniature chubby cows. They're just amazing. It's one of my favorite groups to look for, because it just takes me to amazing locations. So moving along from the rivers that drain into the ocean, I start going up in altitude to try to reach those glaciers. And sometimes I have to call in my super cool nerd friends that have they're just amazing with ropes. I'm learning from them. So everything that I do, even though I try to do it alone, when I find places like this, I just need to call up on help. It's like we cannot let this opportunity pass by to rappel down waterfalls. So just like Joe told you in the introduction, we did a live event rappelling down this waterfall to try to find insects that live on the vertical surface of these waterfalls. So I do sometimes call on the local tour and field guides to actually help me to try to look for all these insects. You're going to see some of the features. So those are two. That's Harold and that's Kesia. They live here in Puerto Rio Tranquilo, the same place that I do. And whenever the chance arrives, we just go out and look for things like this. So this little insect actually lives in the moss that is growing on the splash zone of the waterfalls. Now we're trying to see if you can find them at specific altitude in the waterfall itself, and they're all over the place. There's some insects that you find in specific areas. This one right here, you find it at the bottom of the splash zone, but never where the water actually hits the rocks. So that is an adult that just came out of its pupa. The pupa is what it's standing on. And when you actually look at this, this is the beauty about what I do, because you try to look into the different life stages, and this might not look like a jewel, but look at the pupa. Those are the pupae. They're beautiful. Once you light them the right way, they seriously look like jewels. So every time I find this, I get super excited because they're just magical. They're beautiful. They're amazing. And knowing that no one has actually seen this before, it just blows your mind. Like, you know, just like I read somewhere, you know, the best discoveries are those that you do yourself, regardless if someone else has seen it or not. For you, it's mind blowing. And then if you know that no one else has seen them, they're even cooler. So this is another one. This is a group that I'm doing a revision. I'm doing an actual postdoc on this group, Dixits. That is a droplet of water. That lets you know how small things are. And look at that, the tail end of the insect. So they use that to breathe, like this part right here. It's just crazy. So I'm taking you through a whole array of insects, not only flies, not only beetles, but like all the insects that I find around. But we move up. We have to move up. I mean, I would love to continue talking several hours about this, but we move up to the mountaintops where we find all those glaciers, you know, the glaciers in the ice field. And once we reach those areas, the biodiversity starts dwindling down as you go up in altitude. So the closer you get to the glaciers, the least amount of biodiversity you're finding, but the biodiversity that lives on the ice, or just on the areas that the ice has cleaned up, the recently deglaciated areas, it's incredibly important to know which species start repopulating areas where the glaciers retreat. So as we know right now, glaciers are retreating faster. So I'm trying to understand what insects start populating those areas so we can actually understand how the biodiversity survive in this area of the world that is being thought to have been completely covered in ice at one point in the geological history. So that's, you know, that's for later on. But nonetheless, we reach the glaciers, and sometimes I just take a team of people that really want to know about the biodiversity they have around. Most of these people right here work as tour guides on the glacier. They wanted to know the biodiversity in that area, and we were looking for specific species. And this species is the glacial stonefly. It's Andiperla. So in order to find it, we were looking everywhere for it. So the picture on the left is actually an ice cave. So I went all the way to the end of the ice cave, as far as I could just reach, and I started looking for that. So I actually found one. That's why you see me there very focused on trying to pick something up. The one on the right is another one of my assistants. That's Nacho. We both saw one specimen, and he just bit me to it. We both seem to love going into crammed areas. In this case, just happened to be ice. And right there, we ended up collecting this. So this is Andiperla. This is the glacial stonefly. Once you start looking into the microsculpture or the morphology, once you start looking it up close, you start finding how beautiful this thing is. So if you actually look at this, look at the joints. They just look like little like hydraulics. This insect actually lives its entire life cycle on the ice, on and in the ice. You only see them coming out of the ice and during the daytime when they're adults. When they're larvae, or when they're larva or nymph, whichever you want to call. There's a big debate. We can get into that later. When they are immatures, you find them really close to the water if they ever leave it, and they try to feed on anything that is around. So they feed on all that polarized rock that the glaciers scrape down from the mountains. That's what they feed on. And there's there's some other things that end up falling onto the ice, and these insects just feed on it. So they're scavengers. They feed on that pulverized rock, and at the same time they feed on another insect that is found there. I will not disclose that. That's for later on. But we did find something really cool. Actually, one of my Harold ended up finding that species. So I'm gonna leave that for later on because it's really cool. So just going back a little bit, that photo was actually taken on glacial ice. So it takes a long time for me to try to get all these photos. All the photos that you're seeing, by the way, are of live insects. I do not take photos of dead insects because then the coloration starts disappearing. All those red areas, once the insect dies, they start losing all the colors. So I try to get as much of the colors as possible while they're alive, which turns into a challenge because every photo that you have seen here, it takes me anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks to obtain because the insects do not cooperate. I still haven't figured out a way to bribe them to not move. So it's quite challenging to do that. So as you can see, it's a monumental task what I'm doing down here. In this area of the world in southern Patagonia, there are very few entomologists in this region, the Isai region. I'm the only entomologist living here most of the time, well, year-round, basically. I go to the States as much as possible, but I am based between here and the Chicago area. So I need to just call on, send out my nerd signal and try to figure out who I can recruit, and who better to recruit than little tiny kids, because they're just amazing. They really love the insects. And what I try to do, what you see right there, that is my niece. The weird thing on the right of your screen is a 3D model of what she is holding on the left side of the screen. That is one of the torrent midges that we find down here. So what I try to do in order to get kids engaged in the biodiversity that surrounds them, especially in remote rural schools down here in Chile, I take their biodiversity that is around their school, put it in little vials, and take it to the actual classrooms so they can actually see it. So my wife and I, she's an educator. She specializes in kids with learning needs. So she specializes in autism, and we try to be as inclusive as possible. So what you see right there is the insect on the left, the 3D model on the right, and we also do a virtual 3D model. So we take tablets into the classrooms so kids can actually zoom in as much as they want. And those weird glasses, those little geeky, nerdy glasses, I take them too, because, there's nothing better than just to fully geared up a child to go out into the field like we see here. So this is Mati. He lives here in Tranquilo. His parents are back there talking about non-insect stuff. So Mati is my only ally. Him and I, when we go out in the field, we just look at insects, and he just got into the insects. So once you start seeing kids getting into insects, it's beautiful. It's just amazing. So what I'm trying to do with this is trying to engage the kids to see beyond what they know. Basically, just start looking into the parts that they've never seen before that is all around them. Insects, not only vertebrates. The vast majority of the biodiversity that is still to be described, they're invertebrates. And insects are going to be a large part of it. So this ends the presentation. I want to continue talking about it more, but without these people and this companies and parks, I would not be able to do this. So I wanted to thank everyone in this slide and everybody else that works in these companies, because without them, I would not be able to actually do the kind of work that I do. And I can explain that a little bit more once we get into the questions. So if you have any if you want to reach out, there's my email. You can reach me through my name on any of the social media platforms. I have not gotten into other ones for the lack of time, not just because I don't want to. So with that, well, I just want to go back to Joe. But of course, sorry, forgot about this. These are other this is such a cool picture that I just cannot show it. These are the pirates. So sometimes some people actually go out on zodiacs to remote areas. I have to just tag along, and as you can see right there, Lepe, yes, that is one of the coolest people to be around with in the field. So, and sometimes it's not only about invertebrates. We find cemeteries, graveyards, and I will leave that there. So yeah.
All
Joe?
right. Very, very cool. The Pirates of Patagonia. That's great. Very cool. Isai, I mean, you're in these places. It's so remote that what you're looking for is so small, and the differences between species can be so small. I mean, how long does it take you to decode whether it could potentially be another species?
Well, it depends on the groups that I'm working for, or that I'm working to look for. So I have a world expertise in some groups, like the primitive crane fly, so I know by looking at the species if it's going to be new or not. There's other ones that I need microscopes, and other ones I have to come back into my nerd cave and actually do some research so I can just go back out again and find those species. So I have to go back to those places several times. That's why the things these expeditions take me to the same places. So if I didn't get the right shot, I can actually go back with more equipment, and hopefully with someone that comes along with me, so we can actually tell the story of those species.
Okay, well, I mean, insects are so small and difficult to find sometimes, to know how much are in an area. Do you know, I imagine there's lots of work to be done to figure out what the populations are like, but do you know if there's any endangered species in Chile or in Patagonia?
Yes. So part of the work, this is the scientific part that I didn't get into. Probably 95% of all the photos that you saw are new or endangered species. I focus on insects that very few people have ever seen alive. The world experts on those groups have never seen them alive. So I go out, try to get a better understanding of what they do out in nature so we can actually protect them. So right now, as a scientist, I cannot tell they're endangered because I don't have all the scientific proof to show it. But the fact that you can only find them in this incredibly rare areas lets us or suggests that they are highly sensitive to human impact, to anthropogenic impact.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I need to put together a story in order for people to really understand what we're looking for and what they do out in nature. That is the challenging aspect of it, that because I'm alone and I am independent, I mean, being independent allows me to be out there, but by doing all this on my own, there's so much I can do. So that's why I'm trying to recruit more people. I'm super happy that I'm going to have a student finally, in a few months. So now I can just go out in the middle of nowhere with someone else.
Amazing. Well, Isai, next year, we're going to have to do this live from the field for year 3 of the Global Biodiversity Festival. I won't settle for anything less than you crouching in a river or rappelling down a waterfall. So mark that in your diary now.
There's plenty of areas around here that I can take you to. It's going to be, it will be mind-blowing. I can tell you that. I think that is the best way of actually getting people out into the field. If they cannot physically be there, why not make a live broadcast so they can actually tell me, just go and look under that rock, so I can just go and get it for them, so they can see what I'm finding. So it's...
Yeah. All right. Well, Isai, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have our first event from South America. Keep up the good work. Looking forward to new pictures and, of course, new events. So thanks so much, Isai, and have a great night.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah. See you later, guys.
See ya.